Stan Hywet Hall and Gardens, the historic treasure of Akron and all of Northeast Ohio. The Stan Hywet Hall and Gardens Gilde, in support of promoting and supporting our beloved local historic treasure, presents Mr. Jim Urban, Volunteer Extraordinaire. Speaking about the decorative arts of Stan Hywet Hall and Gardens. Recorded at the March 15, 2022 Guild meeting held in the Carriage House meeting room at Stan Hywet Hall.
I think everybody else knows Mr. Jim.
Thank you very much, Diane. We'll be talking about decorative arts at Stan Hywet. When these industrialists were building their large estates at the early part of the 20th century, there were gentlemen who bought art for art's sake. For instance, Andrew Mellon, Frick, Getty, the DuPonts. Others bought decorative art, and as F.A. Seiberling did, or his wife, and F.A. just signed the check. So this is what we'll be looking at. I've divided this talk into three sections: wall art, metal art, and if we have time, fiber art. Start with wall art. Before we talk about anything in the house, we have to mention their interior decorator, Hugo Huber. And we know very little about Hugo Huber, the man. Where he was born, I do know he had two wives. But we certainly do know some of the items that he purchased for the house. His company in New York City was founded in 1888. He signed the contract with F.A. Seiberling in August of 1912. Traveled to Hessel, Michigan in the summer of 1913 to discuss plans for the interior design of the house. I understand he made a couple of trips to the summer home. His office building and little factory, well, I actually had a couple of factory buildings, is still standing in lower Manhattan. It is now the mission consulate for the country of Cyprus. So if you're in New York City, take a look. We will start at the Plaza Hotel in New York City. There was an art gallery or an art sale, the Blakesley Gallery. Fred Seiberling and Hugo Huber traveled to New York to pick out some artwork for the house. At the Blakesley Gallery, he purchased 7 paintings. Now, I'm not going to go into, it's important to me, but I'm not going into dates when this artist was born or died. Just remember, putting into proper perspective, think of George III. And if you're not into English history, think of the American Revolution, 1776 plus or minus 30. This is the period that we are talking about in these 7 paintings. The artist as well as the subject matter, all from that same period. We all know and love this view. And we are looking at 2 of the paintings that I think, top of my list, are museum quality. the two paintings that you see here. The one on the left of the fireplace is of Sir Thomas Lethbridge. He was a baronet, the second baronet of Sand Hill County, and his descendant, just born in 1950, I think, is the 7th or 8th baronet of Sand Hill. This painting was done by Sir Thomas Lawrence. There are three artists of that period that I think are the holy trinity of British portraiture from that period. Sir Thomas Lawrence, Joshua Reynolds, and Thomas Gainsborough. Those three, I consider the holy trinity. This painting was done by Lawrence, and quite often these portraits are accompanied with Mrs. So you have Mr. and Mrs. And there he is with Lady Lethbridge. Now, Lawrence had a very elegant style, and it's noted really in ladies' portraits. You could see the flow of and the drapery of the garments. So this is very characteristic of Lawrence, and you ladies may be interested in the Empire dress. If you venture up to Cleveland, at the Cleveland Art Museum, they have three paintings by Sir Thomas Lawrence. Oh, by the way, Sir Joshua Reynolds dies in 1792, and Lawrence takes over the position as the official artist for George III. Now, some of us really don't know that much about artwork, but some of us know his most famous painting that we see all the time, even in Woolworths. Who shops at Woolworths anyway? Anyway, Walmart, Pinky. That is Sir Thomas Lawrence's most popular portrait. Now we come to the next one, to the right of the fireplace. This is a painting by George Romney. It's a painting of Major Pearson. Major Pearson was an officer of the East India Company. He starts out in the Navy, transfers to the East India Company, and people who are involved in the East India Company, some of them became quite wealthy, and he did too. The East India Company controlled the trade, the spices, etc., between India, the subcontinent, and England. So they did become quite wealthy. You see next to the painting of Pearson is George Romney's sketch of the painting. And we only have a small portion of the original painting. Someone cut it up. There is Major Pearson, a Brahmin, an Indian holy man, a palm tree, a slave boy in the back. In 1901, at a gallery, the full portrait was intact. And then sometime between then and the Blakesley Gallery, it was cut up. So we have just Major Pearson. I have seen a photograph of the painting of the Indian holy man. Where is it? I don't know. Oh, by the way, going back to Sir Thomas Lethbridge, his wife's portrait was also at the Blakesley Gallery. Don't know why Hugo Huber didn't want to bring Mr. and Mrs. Lady Lethbridge was auctioned off in '86 at Christie's to a private collector, and then closer to 2000 it was on the market again, but did not sell. So it's still floating around there. Now I have to digress a bit from and talk about George Romney. By the way, Senator Mitt Romney is a descendant of George Romney. His favorite model or muse was Emma Hart, dear sweet Emma. Romney painted 60 portraits of Emma in various guises: biblical, historical, Shakespearean, mythological, but 60 portraits. In fact, one of them, those portraits of Emma, was sold to the Prince of Wales. So it's someplace in the royal collection you have Emma. Now, Emma had a shady past, but we won't get into that. However, eventually she marries Lord Hamilton, who is the British minister to the court of Naples. And so Lord and Lady Hamilton, they are living in Naples. And then we have Napoleon invading everybody. And during that period, she happens to meet a naval officer, Horatio Nelson. Oh, be still my heart. They fall madly in love. And that's a whole nother story. Now, if you want to learn more about that relationship, every once in a while on the Turner Classic Movie, there is a movie that comes up, that Hamilton Lady, starring Sir Laurence Olivier and Vivien Leigh, and tells you how this all comes about. The story begins when she's in the poorhouse. Oh, the poor thing. Let's go to the music room. One of my favorite paintings in the music room, right above the fireplace, is Lord William Craig. He's a Scottish judge, painted by Sir Henry Raeburn. Raeburn lived most of his life in Edinburgh, painted just about anybody in Scotland. He's interesting because his artistic talent is a little bit different from some of the others. He uses a bolder brush stroke, and he likes bright colors, contrasting colors that you could see there. It was more than a month ago, I was watching a program, PBS. There's a series, Scottish Country Homes. And there was a modern Scottish country. Well, in Britain, anything that's modern is 200 years old. So in the 1996, the Scottish home had a horrible fire. And the narrator on the program said, and all artwork, including all of the Raeburns, were able to be saved. So as soon as I heard that, I said, I know that name. So, oh, I don't want that. Now we're familiar with this portrait. F.A. Seiberling, who we dearly love, hangs in the Tower Landing. Irene didn't care for this portrait. It was too dark, she said. And you may not like it, but it is our leader, and we dearly love it. But the artist, he's one of my favorite artists because he is so different than some of the others. And this is Jean Alexis Teslov. He truly is a Renaissance man. Obviously, he paints. If you go to the Nixon Presidential Library in San Clemente, you will see a portrait of Nixon hanging there, painted by Tesloff. Maybe he was a Republican because Tesloff also painted Eisenhower. He also did some beautiful landscapes. But he was born to nobility. His father was a count. A family friend was composer John Sibelius. And he was a sportsman. He represented his country in 1924 at the Olympics. And he got the gold medal, the gold medal for marksmanship, pistol shooting. Interesting man. He also got a degree in architecture from the University of Helsinki. He was a singer, and a very talented singer, because he spent some time in Bayreuth. Cosima Wagner encouraged him to be a Helden tenor, and he decided he wasn't going to be a Helden tenor. But he did sign a contract with Columbia Records. He is a Renaissance man. He had a son with his first wife, Jean, who was an Olympic skater, and partnered with Sonja Henie. Now, some of you youngsters probably have no idea who Sonja Henie was. But yes, and he appeared in the movie with Sonja Henie, Sun Valley. Anyone want to sing the song? It happened in Sun Valley. He had a daughter from his second marriage, Eili, if I could pronounce Finnish properly. And she was an interesting gal. And I'm looking at my notes here. She was also an actress, and she was a regular on the Burns and Allen show. Some of his landscapes are exhibited throughout the area. Hoagy Carmichael, again for you youngsters may not remember Hoagy Carmichael, he was an art collector. He has a couple of Tesloff paintings, and if you go to Bloomington, Indiana University, there is the Carmichael Gallery, and one of the paintings that's hanging there is Stardust Dreams, painted after the song Stardust by Tesloff. He also had a choral group. The choral group sang here at the 50th wedding anniversary. And if you lived in New York on Tuesday, November 22nd, 1932, turn your radio on at 5:15 and you will hear the Tesloff singers. So that's my man, Tesloff. Quite interesting. I spent too much time on him. We are all familiar with this painting. This was done by Emil Fuchs. And Emil was born in Vienna, spent most his early years in England, and then about 1915, 1916, there was a definite anti-German attitude in England, so he comes to America, becomes a U.S. citizen in 1924. But he got to be very close friends with the royal family. In fact, he painted, after the death of Queen Victoria, he painted Victoria lying in state. He also created the coronation medal for Edward VII, and he also designed a postage stamp for Great Britain. Next to our favorite painting is another painting by Fuchs, and that is Emily Post. And it is hanging now at the Brooklyn Museum of Art. Also, Brooklyn has a painting by Fuchs of Edward VII. Fuchs came down with cancer or some such thing and commit suicide, but he set aside like $500,000 to continue his work at some location. Here's a portrait we are also familiar with, Henrietta. This was painted about 1917. This is Lydia Amanda Brewster. That's her maiden name. Sewell's is her married name. She was married to Robert Sewell, the painter of the Canterbury Tales. Her style reflects back to Gainsborough and Lawrence, a very elegant English style. Gertrude commissioned her to do 3 portraits of the 3 girls in her life: Irene, Virginia, and Henrietta. And Irene being Irene, Ma, don't bother me. So that was never done. This is ours here at the house. And in Cambridge, Massachusetts, at Ned Handy's home, is a portrait of Virginia. So that still is in existence. In 1893, at the Chicago Columbian Exposition, she won a medal, a bronze medal. Now, their home was on Long Island in Oyster Bay. It was designed by her husband. And Better Homes and Gardens, I'm quoting them. They're talking about their home. Country's most notable residence. I would love to see it. Here's a portrait that we don't really pay attention to. This is in the William and Mary room, right above the fireplace. It's of Lady Vanderveer. Now, this portrait and the artist is 100 years before all those English folks. We think Lord Vanderveer was also painted, but we don't know if where it is, if it ever existed. And it was painted by Caspar Netscher. Caspar Netscher, depending on whose biography you read, he was either born in Heidelberg or in Poland. They're several hundred miles, but all his life was spent in the Netherlands. He got to be close to the royal family there. In fact, he painted a portrait of Princess Mary of Orange. And of course, Princess Mary of Orange with her husband William become William and Mary. How fitting for that room. A number of years ago, we had a gentleman from the Cleveland Art Museum here. I don't know really what he was doing, but he put together sort of a tour of artwork. Now, I don't know if he was doing that for the Cleveland Art Museum or for Stan Hywet, but it never came into being. He stated that this portrait is the masterpiece in our collection. Now, when you go into the morning room, there's a lot of artwork, but I'm just picking out one. And this one here is, let me get my notes together. This is of Lady Betty Foster. To the best of my knowledge, no relation to Barb Foster. This is a tinted engraving by Francesco Bartolozzi. Bartolozzi was born in Florence, spent most of his adult life in London, and then moves to Madrid and passes away in Madrid. He was very talented engraver. In fact, he did not invent the process. Now, Stephen could probably tell me more about it, but he perfected the method of stipple engraving. Those are the dots you see on postage stamps and currency. So he was good. I don't know how these engravers did this, but the original painting was done by Joshua Reynolds. Now, they did not have Xerox machines in those days. So how they transferred one image to this, I don't know. But this is what he was able to do. But Lady Betty Foster was extremely interesting. I was watching last month on PBS again, Secrets of the Manor. And the commentary was, she's a snake in the grass. Ooh, that's serious. She married John Foster, had 2 children with him. After 5 years, this isn't for me, and walks out. Now, I don't think she ever saw her children again. A snake in the grass. And she took up with a couple of gentlemen and eventually becomes very close, dear friends of Georgiana Spencer Cavendish. And of course, she also becomes a very close friend of Lord Cavendish and moves in with them. And it was a menage a trois. And the good Duke of Devonshire fathers 2 of her children. And Georgiana, just a sweet woman, incorporated that whole family in one group. And just lived happily ever after. After several years, Georgiana, and by the way, Princess Diana is the descendant of Georgiana, the Spencer family. She dies, and 3 years later, Lady Betty marries the Duke, and she becomes the Duchess, and she's happy. Now, in the social activities of the day, she gets a chance to meet Lady Hamilton. 2 interesting ladies. This is, I will quote, as far as Lady Hamilton's appearance, she says, coarse and vulgar. Supposedly, Lady Hamilton had a good singing voice. What does she say? A secondary talent and performance. And conversation, uninteresting. Her pronunciation, very vulgar. Overall, she is always vulgar. I did not make that up, you know. This is an etching that we very seldom see because we don't pay attention. This is on the back wall of the library. This is Windsor Castle. It was etched by Sir Francis Seymour Hayden. He was, by the way, a brother-in-law of James Whistler, of Whistler's mothers. They worked together for a while, then they had a falling out. But he was a physician surgeon, and he took up engraving to get his hands dexterous, and so he had a flexible hand. And he was also, at one time, Queen Victoria's physician. When you walk out of Virginia's bedroom, you see 3 lithographs of the building of the Panama Canal. This was done by Paul Pennell, some say Pennell. And I have to tell you a cute story. This happened at the recent Deck the Hall. It was one of those nights when we had over 1,000 people. You don't get a chance to talk to too many people. But I have upstairs duty. 2 women come out of Virginia's room, and one woman is giving the guide a tour, of course, points to these things and says, "Oh, these are pictures of the building of Stan Hywet." My mother once told me, if you have nothing nice to say, keep your darn mouth shut. The 3 lithographs we have, a set of 23, we only have the 3. And that is a photo of Paul Pennell. Now, it's not part of decorative arts, but she did do a lot of painting, and we are very fortunate to have a lot of her painting. Here's just a clipping of from the Akron Times of her exhibit taking place in New York City. Now we'll transfer to metal art. These were done by Paul Manship. Paul Manship was born in St. Paul, studied in New York, and in 1909 receives the prestigious award, the Prix de Rome. Studies in Rome for 2 years, comes back to this country, and has puts together an exhibit which was very well received. And one of the items at that 1912 exhibit is the Lyric Muse, which is the one on the right. So that is from 1912. The 2 previous ones are normally, the collection department moves things around. Normally they're on the table in the alcove in the music room. These 2 figures, sculpture, are on the mantle in FA's office. I'll show you another view. There they are. Now, notice some difference in that. This is not at Stan Hywet. These 2 figures are at the Chicago Institute of Art. So the Manship sculptures are museum quality. And the photo here was given to me by my dear friend, C.B. Drennan. He takes his camera every place. If you don't know who Paul Manship is, this is his most famous creation. Now, this is an oddity. We don't pay attention to this. This sits, some people call it an ashtray, that sits in the center of that semicircular settee in the music room. A few years back, I was working at house cleaning, and some of us know about house cleaning. I was moving this in or out of the music room, and I noticed that it has the artist's name stamped into the base. And the artist is Ernest Wise Kaiser. So I went home, checked with my Google machine, found out that he was born in Baltimore, studied in Paris at the Académie Julian, which Amanda Sewell also studied at the Académie Julian. His, probably not to me, but a huge sculpture is at Parliament Hill in Ottawa. It's Sir Galahad. This little thing is called Spring. So when I Googled this, it connected me with a link to the Smithsonian. And the Smithsonian shows me a picture, and it says, ownership unknown. Now, there is a slight difference from the picture that the Smithsonian has and this, because in the picture, and I have a copy of it over here, she is holding two stalks or something, and we don't have that. Now, Lori Gillis, former curator here, said that several years ago, there was some repair done to this one. But this is spring. Did he make fall, winter? I don't know. Great art? I don't know. But I just discovered it by house cleaning. Some of us don't see that charming little boy, the bust of the boy. That's first grandchild, baby John, that sits on that window ledge in the round room. And there is the artist, William Drydock Paddock, sculpting baby John. This was done in 1920 at their winter home in Miami. And something else that he did, of course, the water goddess.
Same artist, Jim?
Yes, yes. Now, one of my favorite artists is Samuel Yellen, and that's a quote by Samuel. He did all of our metal work. Iron is a dead metal, and it is fun to bring it to life. He was born in 1885 in Galicia, Poland, which is the same section of Poland that my grandmother came from about the same time. Maybe they were neighbors. He came to, after studying in Europe, he came to America in 1906, moved to Philadelphia. His sister and mother were already located in Philadelphia. The very next year, he becomes a instructor at the Pennsylvania Museum School of Industrial Arts. And then in 1909, opens his very first shop. His first major commission was the front gate at J.P. Morgan's house on Long Island. Now, what a start that is. And then we were shortly after that. And there is our front gate. Yeah. And this is what he did many front entrances, front gates. Metalwork should not be a barrier, but a bridge inviting. And this is the J.P. Morgan estate on Long Island. I consider his greatest achievement, this is the J.P. Morgan estate. I consider his greatest achievement the Federal Reserve Bank in New York City. Michael, have you been there? It is a major undertaking. It took 3 years to complete, 200 tons of wrought iron. It's the largest commission of decorative wrought iron in the modern world. But as I said, I consider this his greatest achievement. He considers his greatest achievement all the metalwork at the Washington National Cathedral. Now, this is in Philadelphia. This is the Packard building. I was there, took a picture of it. I did not take this picture. Assuming that man is about 6 feet tall, look at the size of that doorway. It is his heaviest assembly, and it's estimated to weigh 10 tons. The Packard building was a bank building. Here we have the main banking floor. He did all the metalwork, the grill work, et cetera, et cetera. However, modern people have modern ideas, and in the early 1970s, all the metal was scrapped. But before we get too far, take a look at the tables in the center. They were at a gallery, $75,000 each. I understand Diane bought one of them. And of course, we know the Yellen keys. A second project that he did in this city of Akron was Holy Trinity Lutheran Church. I was very fortunate to be there when they were remodeling or restoring the church. All the chandeliers were down. So we had a wonderful time to look at a close-up look at the chandeliers. But Yellen did all the chandeliers in that church. And I have some extra photos over here you could take a look at. The third project that he had was right across the street at the Sisler home. And that's the front entrance to the Sisler home. Our friend Janice Fisher lives in that house now. Now, I was told before I took this picture, or Bruce Greer and I took the picture, that the former owner was a very private individual. If you're going to go there, be careful. You may call the police. So I sent him a letter on Stan Hywet stationery saying that we are taking a look at his front gate, this Yellen gate, and so don't be alarmed. You'll have two people with cameras there. Fine. Bruce and I took those photos. Shortly after that, the gates disappeared. Now, Janice says, the previous owner says, they were rusty, I scrapped them out. Once again, my mother said, if you don't have anything nice to say, keep your mouth shut. I seriously doubt if they were scrapped out. He probably got it. No, I've enough said. Now we'll step quickly into fiber art before Vicki throws me out. We'll talk about carpets. My favorite carpet or rug is in the master bedroom. It's a very rare Saruk. And the reason I say it's rare because most Saruk rugs do not have animals woven into the design. Even then, this is from 1850. Even then, the Shiites and Sunnis were discussing among each other. One said this is a form of idolatry. But if you look at the field of the rug, there's wild animals attacking each other. There's an ugly-looking serpent dragon thing crawling around. There's danger in that rug. But in the four spandrels, or four corners, there's peacocks and birds. Peacock is a symbol of tranquility and peace. So leave that wildness and go into the corners. Symbolism, I think that's ideal for a bedroom. When you walk through that bedroom door, leave your cares behind and go into peace and tranquility. Here's a view of the music room. We'll talk about the rugs here. There are several rugs purchased from the Baluchistan Rug Company. 4 of them with an inscription on, and I'll get to that. Also a Baluchistan rug is in Irene's room, but it's a Indo-Chinese rug. Baluchistan had an office in New York, a factory in India. There is a story, and I want to get a little more information on this. The The Seiberlings and Hugo Huber were on their way to Europe, and in the dining room, they met two gentlemen from the Baluchistan Rug Company. And before that voyage was over, this deal was sealed to purchase these rugs. I'm not sure of the date. I don't know if this is an Irene story, but I do know for a fact that Hugo Huber and the Seiberlings traveled in January of 1915. These rugs could not possibly have been woven in that short period of time. So did they take another trip? Further investigation. I'll give you a little history lesson. There was an emperor in India, Akbar. And then we had some problems. And he had to go into exile to Persia. While he's in Persia, he is surrounded by artists and rug makers, etc. Well, when things settled down in India, Akbar moves back to India triumphantly, but brings with him artists from Persia. This starts Mughal painting, this starts the rug making industry, so he brings all these artists. For years and years, Indo-Persian rugs were considered inferior. But at that Chicago exhibition, the Columbian Exhibition 1893, India had a pavilion there, and they brought in their rugs. Suddenly, everybody realized these are quality rugs. So we have Indo-Persian rugs from the Baluchistan, from India. Now, take a look at this. You youngsters may not know it, but you see a service carpeting, a green service carpeting on that west wall. Back in the 60s, that's how you exited the estate or rather the house after a guided tour. You exit through the music room, through the stage. On my first visit here, I was in diapers at that time. I exit. Yeah, that's how you exit. But I just wanted you to show. Now, there are 4 rugs from Baluchistan with this inscription. This is the one from the dining room. These are to be viewed from inside the room. They're not in Arabic, they're in Farsi. I had a guest tell me that. And it states, made by teacher Makbul and 9 students for Sir Seiberling, 1915. And of course, anyone of importance in India at that time was Sir somebody or another. So we have this inscription on the music room, great hall, dining room, billiard room. This is our tapestry hanging in the great hall, the death of Ahab. A little bit of history on tapestries. First of all, you have to be wealthy to own one, even in medieval times. These castles were cold and damp, so you purchase a tapestry. It acts as insulation. You could also cover doorways with it, so you have a decorative item and also insulation. In 1901, there was a sale, a huge sale of tapestries. 88 tapestries were sold. They are called the Disumsi tapestries. I have to find out more because I don't know if Mr. Disumsi was a Mr. or just the name of a gallery or what, but the 88 tapestries were sold for $160,000. And they went to the 4 winds. Museums got a few, various dealers got a few, and who knows where they're all at. We bought ours from the P.W. French Company in New York City. The 2 that should be hanging, well, one is out for restoration, and Hugo Huber got a discount, so we got those for $16,500. Look at your calculators or your smartphones. Probably today, I hate throwing figures out, about $396,000. And tapestries were important to the various members of royalty. For instance, when Louis XIV died, he had in his inventory 1,155 tapestries. Henry VIII only had 2,000 tapestries, but they were scattered at 17 royal residences. And I talked enough, and if you have any questions, I'll entertain. I'm not an art expert. But any questions? I could not cover everything, obviously. Yes, Michael?
You said one of the tapestries is out
for restoration.
What goes on in a restoration for a tapestry? I mean, for something that old,
Tom could probably tell you more about it than I can.
I'll try my best. So, yeah, Rebecca at the Well is the tapestry that is currently in Hywet for restoration and conservation. She left last July, and surprisingly, they're on track to bring her back this July, so that's exciting. Wow. So when it comes to restoration, they're doing some light, gentle cleaning, and then there are some areas where it's threadbare, so they're going back in and they're color matching reproduction threads to fill in. The goal is not to make her look showroom new, but just to stabilize and preserve her for another 500 plus years. So that's the short and sweet version of it.
So then does Ahab go out?
Once we finish raising the funds for it, yes. Yeah.
When was Frank Seiberling's portrait painted by the Finnish artist?
Oh, it was given to them in 1937 for the 50th wedding anniversary, and I find that interesting. It's a strange anniversary gift. And I was, what was the connection? And Teslov's second wife, Grace, was an opera singer, had 40 roles under her belt at the Metropolitan Opera. And I was just wondering if Gertrude and Grace Teslov somehow connected. Oh, did I tell? I may not have mentioned to you. The Teslovs had a summer home in Bar Harbor, Maine, and various opera singers of the day would congregate there, and the neighbors said they heard singing into the hours. Lawrence Melchior, I know. Kirsten Flagstaff was another one, a close friend. So they would congregate, have a glass of wine, and sing until the wee hours.
So the paintings that you showed on the screen, those are authentic?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes, Harriet?
Two other questions, Jim, and thank you for doing this. I know exactly how much work this took you, so God bless you for doing it. When was Gertrude and Franklin's portrait painted by Emil Fuchs? And then
Good question, and I'm not sure, because if you look on F.A.'s desk, there is a photo of that. Did he paint from the photo? I don't know. Or was the photo taken of the portrait? I really... So you're looking at Franklin as maybe 8 years old or 9 years old, so it's possibly in the late teens.
And then my other question was, I just remember from my early days, Mrs. Musters dressed as Hebe.
Yes.
Who painted that in the music room?
Well, I skipped the other paintings, but that's a good point. That Mrs. Mustard, this is the last painting you see before you enter the west porch. Years and years ago, we used to say that was painted by Sir Joshua Reynolds. Well, we sent the painting out to the ICA for restoration or some work, and the ICA tells us that the maker's mark on the canvas was 1792. That's the same year as Reynolds died. So it is highly unlikely that it was painted by Joshua Reynolds. Current research scholarship says painted by John Hopner. Another famous artist from that period. A little gossip about John Hopner. His mother, Fraulein Hopner, was a lady in waiting to Queen Charlotte, the wife of George III. And who was the father of John Hopner? There's some rumor that could be George III.
The two tapestries in the Great Hall, were all the tapestries bought at the same time? The other two in the Great Hall?
Yes, I think I have an invoice, a copy of the invoice, because these included the two seasonal ones that are in the music room, and possibly the verdure tapestries that are hanging, the smaller ones.
And just to calculate from the 16,000 you mentioned, it's 449,000. Okay. So even more.
Okay. I have an old calculator.
Would that be on your flip phone?
Yeah. I have a story about that. Any other questions? Yes, Pat?
Yeah, I was looking over the notes on Meadowbrook Hall and their notes, and they say that you can't take flash pictures. They said no photos of the paintings and prints are permitted because of copyright issues. I've never heard that.
Maybe they have, but we don't have it.
I thought that.
Our former curator and vice president did not want photos at all because he didn't want people coming into the house taking photos and publishing their own book. Mrs. Mark Hepner. Okay, Diane, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jim. That was very informative there. I'm sure everybody enjoyed it. But before we go, Linda, where are you? Oh, right there. Linda has a request.
I'm looking for 3 people who would be willing to bring refreshments for our May meeting, which is May 17th. If you would give me your name and telephone number, I will call you the week before as a reminder. So if you would see me before you leave, I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, one other comment going back to your question. The 2 tapestries that are in the music room, the season, $16,000. Here's the invoice.
Okay. Okay, thank you everybody for coming. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you on our little outings. Don't forget, if you got the money today, you can pay Pat. And also see Linda. And thank you for coming, and please drive safely.
Many thanks to Mr. Jim Urban, Mr. Stan Hywet, for sharing his vast knowledge of everything Stan Hywet with the Stan Hywet Guild members. The Stan Hywet Guild and Stan Hywet Hall and Gardens partners in volunteer service to benefit beautiful and historic Stan Hywet Hall and Gardens.